China Evergrande Group has narrowly avoided defaulting by submitting an overdue interest payment. The highly indebted property company paid $83.5 million to international bondholders on Friday. The move temporarily prevents the real estate giant from default. Evergrande received a 30-day grace period after failing to pay its bondholders last month. The last-minute wire transfer was made just hours ahead of the company's Saturday deadline. China's former leading property developer is still over $300 billion in debt. More than $500 million in payments will be required by the end of the year. And there are questions about how long Evergrande will be able to stay afloat. With more on those questions, Chen Zhao joins us now. He is the chief global strategist for Alpine Macro, an investment research firm based in Montreal. Chen, welcome. Thanks for being with us. So what does this latest $83.5 million payment, which is really quite small in terms of what they need to be paying, what does it mean for the real estate giant? How much time does it buy them?
First thing first, I think the group is experiencing some liquidity problem. It's not necessarily a sovereign problem, meaning the company actually has assets that they can sell. This is obviously a pleasant surprise for global bondholders. It basically also highlights the fact that the company has a lot of assets they can sell. This by no means that the company's out of the woods. My feeling is probably 50-50 call whether they'll be able to meet next payment. I just did a rough calculation from November all the way to April. There'll be total amount of $1 billion more, around $1 billion of a coupon payment. Whether they can assemble enough money by disposing their assets is still a question. But I think, if they are really working very hard to dispose some of their assets, they may have a chance of making it.
So to get that much money together to make a payment that large, does that mean they have to go on a selling spree and just sell whatever they can?
Absolutely. They have to go for a fire sale. They have a lot of assets, different kind of business. They have already sold some. I think right now they are also trying to dispose some other part of the their assets. 50-50 call, I still believe that is the right answer.
So what did they do wrong? How did Evergrande's finances get to this point?
It's the problem with the Chinese property companies is that they have gone into a borrowing spree because of the Chinese loans interest rates are pretty cheap for quite some times, and also the property prices have gone up so much. So every property company is almost taken as a given that they'll be able to make money. As a result, let's say the Evergrande, their liability to asset ratio is about 80%. Usually, that is sort of unimaginable in any Western business. Basically, you lever up to that extent. So that is actually a quite common phenomenon in the Chinese property sector. Now, this is a payback time that the government basically is saying this is no longer viable. The government basically has a red line, which is that if you have an asset liability ratio that high, banks will stop providing any loans. That's why there's a bunch of Chinese property companies got into liquidity/sovereign problem today.
And so you talk about the Chinese government here. What role is it playing exactly in all of this? And from the government's perspective, is Evergrande too big to fail?
I don't think so, because the People's Bank of China made a statement actually as recent as last week, basically saying Evergrande is on its own. So the government is not going to provide any credit line to it. Actually, the Chinese government probably want to make Evergrande a bad example of over-leveraging. That's why actually they have not really provided any line of credit to it. Actually, I think probably they wish that this thing is going to go down to actually make an example of that.
Right.
But nonetheless, the company has some assets, some liquid assets, some illiquid assets. They're being able to assemble enough cash to get over the first, first payment. But there is a lot of payments. As I said, it's about $1 billion payments, in the next 4 months or so. I think it's remain a question mark whether this company is going to be a viable. I think it's still 50-50 call.
Right. And again, it is a real estate company, not a bank. I mean, a lot of people are trying to draw parallels between the 2008 financial crisis and companies like Bear Stearns that went down. But this is a real estate company. Will it have the same kind of impact if it defaults as a bank would, for instance, on the Chinese financial system or on the global marketplace?
No, not at all. If you think about it, their interest-bearing liability, which basically is loans or bonds, it's about $86, $89 billion. Whereas, as you said, overall liability is about over $300 billion. So a small portion of that liability actually is owned to the banks or bondholders. Small, very small amount. The big chunk of their liability is really the prepayment that they collected from homeowners. That is the big chunk of the liability. So I would say it's not a lot of counterparty risk. When you think about Lehman, when you think about Bear Stearns, these are financial institutions got lots of third-party risk. But here it's reasonably transparent. You know who owes what, who has how much. That is pretty easy to see. So I don't see this as a systemic problem at all.
Chen Zhao, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you very much, Tanya.